often remembered as Microsoft's failed attempt at capitalizing on the mascot craze, which is true. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't love his design, and the game itself I still quite like, despite its issues. But at the center of that chaotic mascot war was a little Tasmanian tiger named Ty. And this wasn't just any old mascot either. Despite being from a smaller studio with a vastly smaller budget, they tried to take a bite out of the big guys. Like the arrogant Icarus flying too close to the sun, Ty slammed other popular mascots at the time, with this infamous commercial depicting Sonic, Spyro, and Crash as busted-up hospital patients quivering in fear at the sight of the new kid in town. It comes off as silly and arrogant today, but back then it was rather exciting seeing another mascot take a stab at Crash after he spent years doing that to Mario. The war raged on, and when I was a kid, it made me excited to see what this little tiger could do. This is one of the very first games I ever covered on this channel. Way back in the day when I had no idea what I was doing and I thought the road to YouTube success was paved by pessimism. Like Ty did to his fellow mascots back in the day, I made fun of the game, and I made his problems seem way worse than they really were. All for the
Yeah, I can tell by what he said.
Painfully mediocre. Right, that's what I called it. I was trying to spin this bogus narrative of revisiting the game I grew up with as a kid just to find out it sucks. I just thought that was a cool and trendy idea, so that's what I went with. But by the end of that first year doing YouTube, I began to realize I was much more interested in exploring what positives and interesting ideas I could pull from games, even if the games themselves aren't all that amazing. I decided I didn't want to be just another YouTube funny man. I want to be somebody that just talks about the things I find interesting. I really don't think I was too fair with this little tiger back then, and now that I've been doing this a little bit longer, I really want to give this one a second look. And there's no better time than now. Fairly recently, the game had an HD remaster on Switch, giving the game a clean graphical uplift while making minor tweaks and adjustments to the gameplay. So let's do this. I'm going to re-review this game from absolute scratch, while also taking note of the handful of differences between this version and the original. I'm going to see how this little tiger's improved, and I guess you guys can see how I've improved. Rome Studios, they're the bad boys behind this one. Being a medium-sized studio from Australia, they've dabbled in a lot of work for other companies, making some licensed games and even making 2 of the Legend of Spyro games. But before they were put on deck to craft an adventure for a little purple dragon, they were best known for a little slice of home. A boomerang-slinging platformer about a Tasmanian...
Never played it.
Bonza! It's one of those things that plays into the country stereotypes while also being made by the people who are actually from there. So while it is all exaggerated and cartoonified, it is a caricature of the people behind the game. Just like how Trailer Park Boys is an exaggeration, but everyone I know here in Nova Scotia can relate to the show in one way or another. Damn, you know what? I don't think I ever gave this title screen enough credit. There's enough going on here.
Usually games that do that shit is always
simple enough to avoid.
They always fucking die anyway.
I love the logo. It is ingenious. Like the simple 2-letter
This is going to be the game to be the game killer. And it's like, no, you're not.
Like most platformers from around its time, Ty begins with
every game that tried to be the Call of Duty killer, the Grand Theft Auto killer, the fucking Halo killer, they always suck ass.
I suck ass.
The Tasmanian Tigers fought with the evil boss Cass to protect the 5 talismans. Cass used the talismans to open a portal, sucking in all the tigers
literally.
into a different dimension called the Dream.
Sorry to disappoint,
The
Tabon.
Tasmanian Tigers were Ty's parents, who scattered the talismans as a last-ditch effort to keep them out of Cass's hands. So it's now up to Ty to gather the talismans before Cass can bring his family back to the Outback and put a stop to Cass's evil plans. Boss Cass is a really goofy and fun villain. I really like him. His design is as kooky as it is sinister. I love how over-the-top his voice acting is, and they get some solid physical comedy out of the animation.
How hard can it be? It's just a little orange rat.
Ty presents us with that familiar clash of warm and cold-blooded creatures that we've seen before in Donkey Kong Country, but it doesn't fully commit to the idea by making the big bad a bird instead. The bad guys are all lizards, but the guy in charge is an ostrich. I think this is an interesting decision, as it helped to avoid obvious comparisons to K. Rool, a decently unique spin on a familiar concept. Ty works really well as an obvious foil to Cass, being more kind-spirited. He may be a result of the cool mascot era, but I find he's much more polite and less arrogant than similar characters like Sonic. He doesn't always have a quick and snarky comeback, and that results in some fun moments where a befuddled Ty doesn't really know how to react to something stupid somebody said.
I'm allergic to gas. Otherwise, I'd do it, you know.
Yeah, okay, no worries.
You know what, that's something else I really didn't give this game enough credit for. The character interactions are really goofy and charming, and while the jokes don't always land, there's plenty of great moments.
On your mic, you did it.
It's just like, it's still good. It's still good, dude. It's still good. I love how the portal just boom, just throws him right out. He just eats dirt immediately. The gameplay is quite similar to other collectathons from before and during its time, most notably Banjo-Kazooie. You'll access a number of open-ended stages, each one riddled about with objectives that'll reward you with a Thunder Egg, which is Ty's equivalent of G's. In order to track down those talismans, Ty's scientist friend Julius has built a teleporter that can warp them right to us. But to power it, he needs Thunder Eggs, conveniently giving us an excuse to collect as many of an object as we possibly can. So, like with any collectathon, you'll complete various objectives to find them. You might find them by navigating obstacles, completing tasks for NPCs, or collecting every one of the 300 opals in the stage. Ty's got a variety of moves he can use to navigate his environment. He's got a standard jump and can glide in the air for a short time by sticking out his boomerangs. While it is a silly idea and does look kinda goofy, I do at least like it when games try to make this central object have as many uses as possible. For example, he'll also use them to extend his grip ever so slightly to hang on ledges. And of course, you can also actually throw them like you're supposed to do with boomerangs. You can do this to knock out enemies. Ty wields 2 of them, so he can throw up to 2 at any given time, which I do really like a lot. I feel like if there's just one boomerang, it takes slightly too long before you get attacked again, but having the 2 gives them a really nice flow. Some enemies you'll have to first break their defenses with a fierce bite, adding an extra layer to an effectively simple combat system. This bite can also be used as a sort of homing attack equivalent, stringing together a series of lunges to make your way across a path of spy eggs. It's pretty much identical to how you use the homing attack in Sonic to hop across enemies, though it doesn't have that satisfying bounce that Sonic did. It feels a lot stiffer, like you've got less control over it, but it is used very sparingly, so it comes off as a brief, refreshing change of pace when it shows up, instead of being a central mechanic like in Sonic. You can also aim the boomerangs in first person for any of those situations where you want a more accurate shot, like hitting a button on the wall or taking out a crocodile or something. The aiming in the original version I found really oversensitive. It was kind of hard to land on where you're trying to hit, but it feels a lot smoother in the HD version. I have a much easier time aiming here. Though the lack of gyro aim was a little bit disappointing, and it's weird because like the game does have gyro controls, but did they introduce gyro assist like many other Switch titles did? No, they made it so you can rotate the controller to zoom in and out with the zoomerang. They didn't like think to attach it to the only thing it's really good for. Like no, they made it so you can tilt the controller left and right to steer Ty as he glides. Like why? It's not really a big deal or anything, especially since Ty doesn't really have that much focus on the aiming, but I don't know, with how much smoother titles like Turok or Stranger's Wrath play with the gyro aim in their respective Switch versions, it's a little bit weird to see a game like this use it in the most arbitrary of ways when other titles kind of already figured this out. But anyway, on top of having those 2 trusty boomerangs, Ty can unlock even more boomerang types. These range from flaming boomerangs that can melt ice and deal extra damage, to ice rangs that can freeze water, creating platforms, or the Zoomerang, a boomerang that can scope out enemies from a long distance. Some of these are definitely more useful than others. I like the ones that have practical gameplay purposes, like lighting stuff on fire, freezing stuff, and stuff like that, you know, instead of the ones that are just another way to damage an enemy. But even if the game doesn't make the most out of every rang, it is a fun little way to add a bit of variety, and I love the way that certain boomerangs will change the lighting on Ty. While some of these are mandatory, you can unlock some optional ones by collecting these big yellow cogs. You'll bring these to Julius, and he'll make you a new rang. My favorite one is definitely the Kaboomerang, if not just for that brilliant pun, and the way they collide to make the explosion after throwing both at once, it's so freaking cool. One nifty little thing they added into the HD version is the rang wheel from the second game. It's a much faster way of switching boomerangs than using a D-pad, so I'm glad they put that in here. Rainbow Cliffs serves as the hub world. It's a little reservoir surrounded by rocky mountains with a tall and slender mountain in the center, with a bridge extending from the top.
Danny, what you doing?
Don't that sound familiar? Gee, I wonder where they got that from. The inspiration here is pretty obvious, but unlike Spiral Mountain, I feel like Rainbow Cliffs somewhat misses the point. While Spiral Mountain
Tavon,
is an iconic set piece that
I'm gonna try something that's gonna piss off people.
That was Grunty's lair. Ty makes its version of a set piece
As a no.
itself, and I don't know. There just isn't really
As a black mage,
it's just cliffs.
I'm gonna use only ice spells.
It's kind of cool, I guess, but that's all there really is here. I think it's fine visually. It works well as a little slice of Australia, but
Won't that
I
fuck
don't
up?
know. I feel like it falls a little bit short of working well as an interesting hub area. But I guess it's the levels themselves that really make a difference.
What? I think it's a pretty chill idea.
Ty's level design is pretty similar to other open-ended collectathons, being a sandbox full of objectives to meet. But unlike Mario or Banjo or other popular ones, Ty's Most levels often have a linear
what did Brennan say?
before getting to an endpoint. These
Brennan's
levels
home.
have one story goal, which you'll be explained and then guided to with a series of pathways and collectibles, which effectively familiarizes the player with their environment while having them stumble upon other Thunder Eggs along the way. Now, other platformers like Banjo usually have more scattered designs, where the player is incentivized to walk
I literally
in
just
whichever
watched the
direction looks
seagull
most
eat a
interesting to them.
whole
And
rabbit.
they do that so no direction is
Why?
the wrong direction. It
I
gives
don't
the player
know.
a lot of freedom.
That's
And
why I don't like
understand that
seagulls.
Ty is trying to guide the player along an initial path.
literally
trying to
just
teach them
ate the
layout
rabbit
before giving them
whole.
that freedom. But the problem is, once those collectibles are all gone after the first run, you're then retreading the level again, searching for those remaining Thunder Eggs, and the now itemless level is difficult.
This is why I don't like
This
seagulls.
is not a problem in a lot of the levels, but
There's
Those
nothing wrong.
bastards are
levels,
really
they
fucking
can
evil
be
when you
a
really
bit
look at
too
shit.
large. Some of these
Nah,
areas
they
have
good
so
boys.
much empty space
No,
that
they
just
ain't.
doesn't have any good reason to be there.
These fuckers will
And
literally
the
scoop up
maze-like,
little
somewhat confusing
goose
nature
babies
some
in front of the
these
fucking
levels,
mom.
it can make
Eat them
searching
shits
for the
whole.
remaining Thunder Eggs a little
Nah.
bit annoying once you no longer have a path to follow. Some levels are certainly better than others, so why don't we talk about one of those levels? I really love this nighttime one. It's structured really interestingly. The first half is linear, but then it opens up into a large lake area full of Thunder Eggs scattered everywhere. This level actually really nails that linear stage becoming open stage type of design, because rather than retreading the same ground in a non-linear fashion, it offers an entirely new section to end the level with instead. It's also just a really chill level overall. I love the choice in color, and the music is so good. It's the water and snow levels where I